The Everglades stretched endlessly before them, a labyrinth of dark water and twisting mangroves that seemed alive, shifting with the wind. Mist clung to the surface of the swamp like a living veil, muting every sound except for the occasional croak of a bullfrog or the distant splash of something moving underwater. For those unaccustomed to this place, it felt as though the world had stopped. Time had no meaning here. Among the group was Mark, a journalist chasing stories that flirted with the edge of belief. Elena, a wildlife biologist fascinated by the swamp's hidden ecosystem. Jake, a local guide with a permanent scowl and a skepticism that bordered on arrogance. And Sophie, a photographer drawn to the beauty and menace of the wild. They had come seeking answers to reports of vanishing hikers, fishermen, and explorers. Yet as they gazed into the shifting fog, none could shake the feeling that something was watching. The whispers came first as a suggestion, a barely audible susurration that slithered through the trees. "Mark, Mark," it said, a voice carried on the wind, yet soft enough to be mistaken for imagination. He froze, straining his ears, but Jake laughed dismissively. "Swamp tricks. Let's keep moving," Jake said, waving them forward. The path narrowed, water rising to knee level, the air thick with the scent of decay. Every step seemed louder than it should be, echoing off unseen walls of vegetation. The group pressed deeper, the sun sinking beneath the horizon and the fog thickening into an almost tangible wall. It was Elena who first noticed the oddities, footprints in the mud that weren't theirs, impressions that began as normal human steps but ended in smudged streaks as though someone had simply vanished. "See that?" she whispered. "These don't make sense." Before anyone could answer, a sudden splash sounded to their left. Something large moved in the water, something fast. Sophie raised her camera, capturing a fleeting blur, but the image revealed nothing, just water rippling unnaturally, then still again. As night fell, the whispers became clearer, threading through the swamp like a warning. "Turn back, turn back." But the group, driven by curiosity and disbelief, pressed forward. By the time they reached a narrow channel leading into the heart of the swamp, the darkness had swallowed them entirely. The trees leaned in, almost protective yet menacing, and the water mirrored a black sky void of stars. The swamp seemed to breathe around them, alive with intent. And then, just as they began to set up a small camp for the night, Sophie froze. From the fog, a figure appeared, tall, shadowed, featureless. The whispers grew louder, urgent, insistent. The figure moved closer, but when they blinked, it vanished. It was their first real warning. The swamp had noticed them. Night had fully claimed the Everglades, and the swamp seemed to pulse with life. Mist twisted around the gnarled roots in mangroves, carrying the scent of decay and something else, something faintly metallic, like blood. The group huddled around a small fire, its flickering light barely piercing the thick darkness. Mark tried to shake off the chill creeping up his spine. "It's just the swamp," he muttered. "We're imagining things." But even he couldn't ignore the sounds. Soft, urgent whispers slithering through the fog. They weren't random. They called names. Elena. Sophie. The voices were intimate, almost coaxing, and the group froze each time a whisper drifted past, leaving goosebumps crawling across their skin. Jake, ever the skeptic, tried to laugh it off. "Stop being babies. It's just the wind through the reeds." Then it happened. A sudden splash erupted from the water near the fire. Elena yelped as she saw Sophie's silhouette dragged backward into the black water, her screams swallowed almost instantly by the swamp. Mark lunged toward the spot, but only touched cold, empty air. Ripples spread across the water, then vanished. "No, no, no!" Elena cried, panic twisting her face. Jake grabbed a stick and swung at the mist, but it passed through him like smoke. Sophie was gone. The fire flickered wildly, shadows dancing across the swamp as if they had a life of their own. Every instinct screamed at them to run, but the swamp had begun to twist around them. Paths that should have led back to safety now curved impossibly, bending the terrain into a maze of reeds, roots, and black water. Mark's camera caught fleeting glimpses of Sophie in the fog, just for a second, always smiling, always wrong, her body distorted and fading into the mist. The whispers grew louder, now overlapping, repeating every word they had ever said, twisting them into something menacing. "Do you see that?" Elena gasped, pointing toward a knot of mangroves. From the shadows, a figure slowly emerged, tall, dark, humanoid but featureless, moving in unnatural, jerking motions. It seemed to hover over the swamp water, gliding rather than walking, and wherever it passed, the water blackened as if consumed. Panic consumed the group. They ran blindly, crashing through roots and water, calling Sophie's name, but the swamp swallowed every sound. Behind them, the whispers became screams, echoing their fear back at them. And then Jake, the guide who had scoffed at every warning, tripped and fell into a narrow creek. His screams were short-lived. When Mark and Elena reached the spot, all that remained were ripples fading into still black water. No trace of Jake, only the whisper now calling their names, closer and insistent. Breathing heavily, Mark and Elena realized the swamp was alive, sentient, and hunting them. Every sound, every shadow, every reflection in the water was a trap. And as the night deepened, they understood the horrifying truth. If you enter the Everglades, it doesn't just hide its victims. It waits, watches, and lures them to vanish forever. Mark's gaze fell on the foggy water, and he whispered, "We need to get out now." But the swamp had other plans. Dawn should have brought relief, but the Everglades offered none. Mist clung stubbornly to the mangroves, twisting around roots and waterlogged logs like ghostly fingers. Mark and Elena moved cautiously, every step sinking slightly into the muddy banks, every sound amplified in the oppressive silence. The swamp no longer felt natural. It felt deliberate, like it was aware of their fear and feeding on it. As they stumbled forward, Elena spotted remnants of past intrusions, abandoned campsites, shredded tents, and objects half buried in mud. A small journal, waterlogged and barely legible, caught her eye. Its pages spoke of explorers lured by whispers, hunters drawn into the swamp, and local legends of a malevolent force that had existed long before human records. One entry chilled them both. It doesn't just take the body, it traps the soul. The swamp remembers your fears, your regrets, and it uses them to call you in. Once you answer, you are never free. Mark shivered. We're not alone, and whatever's here, it knows us. No sooner had he spoken than the whispers returned, soft, deliberate, personal. Mark, Elena. The voices dragged memories and fears from deep within, twisting them into sharp, suffocating dread. A movement in the water caught their eyes. Something stirred, a shadow humanoid, taller than any human, yet without features, gliding just above the murky surface. Its presence warped the air, bending the fog and reflecting light in unnatural ways. Elena froze. It's feeding on us. It wants something from us. The swamp itself seemed to mock them. Channels that had led somewhere safe earlier now twisted back upon themselves, roots forming walls where there had been none. Waterways that should have flowed forward were now dead ends, and the whispers grew urgent, pleading, taunting. Then came a sound far worse than the whispers, screams, echoing as though the swamp had swallowed them long ago and now spat them back, distorted and terrifying. Mark recognized Sophie's voice among them, but it wasn't her. Something had taken her essence and twisted it into a lure. Elena's eyes widened as she pieced together the horrifying truth. The swamp was alive in a supernatural sense, a predator that used fear and memory to trap intruders. "We need to keep moving," she said, though her voice trembled. It's changing the swamp around us." Suddenly, a low ripple surged through the water, and from the fog emerged figures, past victims, half real, half phantom, their faces distorted into silent screams, reaching toward Mark and Elena. One figure lunged, vanishing before it could touch them, leaving only a cold, wet void in the water. Mark stumbled backward, realizing their only chance was to escape before the swamp fully consumed them. But every path looked the same, and every whisper promised safety in one direction while pulling them deeper into danger. Exhausted, drenched, and terrified, they moved forward with nothing but instinct. The swamp seemed endless, and each step carried them closer to the horrifying truth. Some who enter are never meant to leave, and some of the swamp's victims may now be part of the trap itself. As the sun climbed higher, glimmers of hope flickered, but the whispers persisted, a constant reminder. The swamp remembered them, and it would not let them go easily. The Everglades had swallowed the morning sun, replacing warmth with a hollow, unnatural light that shimmered off the black water like molten silver. Mark and Elena moved cautiously, each step uncertain, each shadow potentially hiding the thing that hunted them. Fatigue clawed at their limbs, but the swamp showed no mercy. It would not let them rest. The whispers had grown louder, sharper, more deliberate. Every secret, every fear they had ever tried to hide now echoed in the fog, twisting into voices that seemed almost alive. Mark, alone, afraid. Elena can't save him. The swamp used their memories against them, shaping their panic. From the dense mist emerged the featureless shadow, taller and more solid than before. Its movement was unnervingly smooth, gliding just above the water as if it had no weight, yet the ripples it left spread outward, consuming everything in darkness. Around it, the swamp warped, bending roots and water into impossible angles, creating a labyrinth designed to trap. Desperate, Mark shouted, "We have to confront it! Running won't save us!" Elena shook her head, clutching the journal they had found, frantically flipping pages for anything that might offer a clue. Between the scribbles and warnings, one line caught her eye. Fear is the key. Confront it or become part of it. Steeling themselves, they moved forward into the heart of the swamp where the shadows were darkest. The shadow creature seemed to anticipate their every move, its form dissolving and reforming around them, whispering, mocking, calling their names with voices of the lost. Suddenly, Sophie's distorted face appeared in the mist, grinning, her voice a chilling echo. "You'll join us soon." Mark and Elena recoiled, but they pressed on. Panic surged, but determination overrode it. They would not let the swamp claim them like it had the others. Mark grabbed a fallen branch. Elena held the journal tightly. They shouted their names, facing the shadow directly. The fog roiled violently, the swamp water bubbling and rising as if the earth itself had become aware of their defiance. The shadow hesitated. It was feeding on fear, and they had forced it to confront courage instead. A sudden surge of wind and mist threw the swamp into chaos. Figures of past victims wailed, rippling through the fog, as if the swamp itself fought back. Mark and Elena ran, dodging twisted roots and ghostly hands, following a path that seemed to open in response to their courage. Finally, they burst into a clearing where the water ran shallow and sunlight pierced the mist. The shadow recoiled at the edge, its form flickering, weakening. The whispers faded, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against their ears. Exhausted, trembling, they realized they had survived, barely, but the swamp remained still, unnaturally calm. A final whisper echoed, almost playful, "Until next time." Mark and Elena stumbled toward civilization, the swamp behind them silent once more, hiding its horrors beneath a deceptive calm. Yet deep down they knew the truth. The Everglades did not forget. It waited, watching, remembering every fear, every weakness, every visitor who dared enter its heart. And one day it would call again.